So you're off the hook for that.
Hello. My name's Kirsty Lang. I'm a presenter of an art show on BBC Radio 4 and a Bridgerton fan, which is why I have been asked to do this today. Let me just do a little introduction. Hello and welcome to the Bridgerton from Novel to Screen. And we're going to be discussing how this extraordinary series made it from Julia Quinn's imagination and pen to Netflix's over 200 million subscribers around the world. So following season one's incredible global success, Bridgerton has been recommissioned for a second season. In fact, they're filming it at the moment. They've been filming it since April. And a further 2 seasons have been commissioned so far. And a spin-off, a Queen Charlotte series, which will be a kind of origin story, which is quite exciting. As fans will know, Bridgerton is set in the very sexy, lavish and competitive world of Regency London high society. There are 8 Bridgerton novels in Julia Quinn's best-selling series, which follows the 8 close-knit siblings in this aristocratic British family, and they must all navigate the rather small upper-class marriage market in order to find a suitable match. So in season 1, you'll recall we saw Daphne coming out for the season, falling in love and marrying her duke. Season 2 will tell the story about how her oldest brother, Anthony, Viscount Lord Bridgerton, has now decided to settle down, having been a bit of a rake. Season 1 was set in 1813 when the English aristocracy left their country estates. They join the season, that's when they leave their country estates, and they descend on London's West End. And the season is effectively a series of social events and balls during which the offspring of the aristocracy are supposed to find eligible partners from good families. So let's have a reminder now of what season 1 looked like.
All is fair in love and war.
Miss Daphne Bridgerton!
You have no idea what it is to have one's entire life reduced to a single moment.
The time has come for the social season.
Tighter! She to breathe, Mama!
My name is Lady Whistledown. You do not know me, but I know you. This is what they have been trained for since birth. Which young ladies might succeed at securing a match?
You've always amused me, Miss Bridgerton. Ever since I was a schoolboy and you were...
All but 5?
Miss Bridgerton!
Oh, pardon me.
Forgive me. Bassett! Bridgerton!
Come here, old friend.
This is my sister.
Duke. I would recognize him anywhere.
How is it possible that there has not been a single betrothal yet? I wish to be entertained.
We find ourselves seated beside each other. I would like to think you're happy about that.
It would be better if you refrained from thinking about me at all. I'm aware of your reputation. I'm anything but interested in you.
And I, anything but interested in you.
Must our only options be to squawk and settle or to never leave the nest? What if I want to fly?
Lady Whistledown has all but declared me ineligible.
Whistledown.
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 If I'm unable to find a husband, I shall be ruined.
Perhaps there is an answer. We could pretend to form an attachment.
Pairing like that would be most enchanting indeed.
Every presumptuous mother in town will leave me alone, and every suitor will be looking at you. Stare into my eyes. If this is to work, you must appear madly in love.
The Duke truly has put your head in a spin.
Is it awful that I'm enjoying it?
Dear reader, if there is a scandal, I shall uncover it.
It is more than just your honor at stake.
You think that just because I'm a woman, I'm incapable of making my own choices?
There is nothing you cannot do. You are a Bridgerton.
Oh,
is this not lovely? All of us together again.
Lovely indeed. We should tempt scandal more often.
Fantastic. Now, I am going to welcome onto the stage our panel. We are very fortunate to have us with us today, the novelist Julia Quinn. The Bridgerton director and Shondaland senior creative production advisor Tom Verica, and Queen Charlotte herself, Golda Roshwell. I don't often share a stage with the Queen. I'm quite excited.
God.
Okay, well let's start with Julia, who's flown all the way over from Seattle to be with us. So it's very exciting. Julia, let's start with what attracted you to this world of Regency London in the first place. I mean, why did you want to write about it?
It started with the simple fact that it was what I like to read. So there's this little subgenre of romance novels called Regency romances, which is sort of like Georgette Heyer, except maybe a little racier, but not much at first. And so that's what I was reading when I was maybe 12 or 13, and I just loved it. It was something that had witty repartee, and I didn't even realize it was sort of this Jane Austen wannabe at the time. And then as I got a little older, I started reading what's called Regency historical romances, which are again a little bit racier. That's what I do, and it was what I liked to read for fun, and so it was naturally what I wanted to write. And it was only later that I really began to kind of think about, okay, well, why am I attracted to this? I mean, it's easy to say, well, I do it because I like it, but why? And what I've realized is it's a very unique period in time in that it is far enough in the past that it's got a certain fairy tale quality to it. We can suspend our disbelief about things. We can kind of allow the characters to behave in ways that would not be acceptable to us today, but we can kind of understand it because it was a different time. And yet it's close enough to the present that people think in ways that are fundamentally familiar to us. So, I usually compare and contrast that to medieval times when there was much more religiosity, there's much more mysticism, people really thought in different ways. The Regency, they're a lot more modern, so it's kind of this sweet spot. And then for a writer like me who really likes writing dialogue, it's just a great time period.
It's interesting what you say about it. Of course, it is a sort of it is quite modern, and it was the beginnings of celebrity culture, wasn't it? Regency London. I mean, they and hence Lady Whistledown, because those sort of scandal sheets really existed, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
And they wrote about people like the Bridgertons.
Yeah, the big difference, though, is that nobody would dare mention anyone by name then. So Lady Whistledown is quite different in that she does mention people by entire name. Before, I mean, they would hint. They would be like Lady B and, Mrs. F and things like that.
And did you have to read those? Did you read those to kind of get ideas?
Not much. I mean, I just knew, I'd seen snippets and stuff, but I already knew that what I was going to create was something a little bit different anyway, so,
Now, there's a lot of sex in Bridgerton.
No.
I mean, more than we're used to
No.
in costume dramas, I think, I would say. And I was interested when I wrote an article about it. I interviewed. There's a number of kind of prominent historical advisors on the series, and Professor John Mullen, who's one of them, said that the Regency aristocracy were extremely promiscuous, unlike the genteel middle classes that Jane Austen was writing about. I mean, they really were having affairs all the time.
They were, although the characters I write about generally don't have affairs because they fall in love and it's true love and they love their partners.
But historians often describe that Georgian period as one of sexual revolution, because British society was, becoming sort of more secular, wasn't it? It was quite racy, London, at that time.
I think Georgian was racier than Regency, which was racier than Victorian. So they kind of backslid there for a little bit.
Tom, let me come to you, Tom Verica. Why did your television production company, Shondaland, feel that Julia's books lent themselves to the big screen?
Well, I think it was Shonda was a huge fan of the books, and I think she saw, she had it in the back of her mind, and when she signed her deal with Netflix, I think immediately she thought it would be a perfect marriage to tell a story like this, a bold story like this, in very cinematic in a very big way.
And this is Shonda Rhimes, the founder of the
Rhimes,
company.
sorry about that, yes. So she had these books and had it in her mind and immediately led with that. And Chris Van Dusen, who's been in the Shondaland family for quite some time, took it and did his take and did a wonderful job with it. But it was something she kind of envisioned from get-go, that how the books were laid out, how with each of the characters, with each of the children, that there's the possibility for multiple seasons, but really staying with one character through one season. And Julia's books really were kind of laid out perfectly in a season format for an 8-episode run. So it was she had that vision, I think, and I think she was pretty good about doing it. So.
And Julia was just telling me beforehand that it's fantastic serendipity, because Shonda Rhimes was on holiday and had run out of reading material and happened to pick up.
That's what she tells me. I still can't believe how incredibly my life has been transformed because she didn't bring enough books with her on vacation. I mean, assuming she's telling me the truth, yeah. I was
great.
I had lots of friends, and they said, "Oh, were you shopping this around Hollywood?" And I said, "No, because nobody in Hollywood was making anything like this. Nobody I know shopped historical romances around Hollywood because people always said it's too expensive, and we don't like romance novels, and whatever." And all of a sudden, I get a phone call. I'm just sitting.
Well,
at
and she's a huge fan of the genre, so I think it is. She read that and just thought. I mean, I think it was a perfect marriage between your books and the bold stories that she wants to tell and the direction she wants to go in.
And had she done a costume drama before? No.
No, we didn't. There was a series we did attempted to do with ABC a few years back that didn't quite take, and I think it probably because it was in limitations of what network, and Netflix really kind of provided a format to allow this to be as bold and as big as it wants to be and what it needed to be. And I think the audiences, as evidence, really embraced. Kind of the world that it could be and as big as it should be.
Yeah, because it's they are very expensive to produce those shows, aren't they? Let's talk about the look of it. It looks amazing, I think. I think Chris Van Dusen talked about exploring the intersection between history and fantasy, turning up the volume on the costumes, very bright colours. And no bonnets. It's a bonnet ban, isn't there?
Yeah, that was very specific with our costume department. And I think it's just doing a fresh take or our take on what this genre is. It's taking a genre that's obviously been done many times and really kind of putting a spin on it to give it a modern and accessibility to make people identify and recognize these things that, everything from the costumes to
music.
Rhythms of how our dialogue goes, the music, because that was something we explored in post-production, which was really that we stumbled on, which was great. So it's kind of adjacent to a lot of those things that we know, but it really is putting a specific stamp on it in regards to casting as well. That really gave us a palette to have a lot of fun and not try to be under the microscope of is this actual documentary, is this accurate to the time? And so there's elements of that, but it is ultimately entertainment, and it is ultimately allowing us to go into that fantasy world of going a little further than what the period always implied.
Golda, the principal characters in Julia's books are often presumed all to be white. That's not the case in the Netflix adaptation. Tell us about the thinking behind this, because I think Netflix describe it as colour-conscious casting, but it starts with a theory about your character, Queen Charlotte, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's what Julia and Tom have been saying, and it's just an extension of a reimagined world, but also taking a part of history. So Queen Charlotte is known to be the only mixed race queen of England. And it's about taking that element of history and pushing the boundaries within fantasy to create a space and a world where characters, people of colour, actors of colour, can come and play and enjoy. And, for everybody here, to see themselves represented in some way, and to kind of mirror the world that we're living in now.
So it's imagine, because of course Queen Charlotte was married to George III, and when he went mad, she basically was kind of running the country, wasn't she?
Yeah, they got married, I think, in 1761. She was 17. She came over from Germany. She was Portuguese descent with African lineage. And I think arriving here would have been daunting. But I think she was a fierce enough woman to embrace it. They were madly in love, and you talk about sex, they had 15 children. So something was going right in the royal
There was
family.
some chemistry.
There was some chemistry there. But there was a devotion, and I think I hope that you see that in Bridgerton, because marrying her world and Julia's books, I think makes the world come alive and kind of bust those doors open to be able to represent the world that we're living in today, and for black and brown people and black and brown artists to see themselves portrayed in romantic, scandalous, joyful ways. I think it's a joy to be involved in.
I mean, another of the historical advisors on the series, Hannah Gregg, actually points out that Regency London was actually much more diverse than what we usually see.
It was a melting pot.
Portrayed on screen, because London was quite the cosmopolitan city.
It was a trading post.
Yeah.
So everybody would come from all around the world, and you know, to trade with us and with others. So it was a melting pot of,
I mean, for you personally, how important do you think it is for young people of colour to see themselves represented in costume dramas? I mean, did you feel when you were growing up watching all these endless costume dramas that you didn't see yourself?
I have a particular journey because I am of mixed race heritage. I never really felt that. It was only until I started doing period dramas that I went, oh, yeah, maybe I should have been doing this. Why wasn't I? And my journey is, my mother was white, so she was sitting next to me when I was watching these period dramas. She absolutely loved them. Like Julia, was mad about period drama, mad about whodunits as well. So all that kind of, Miss Marple, Agatha Christie, Jane Austen, all that kind of stuff. I watched it as a child, but that was being portrayed in my household, so I never really had the inkling that I couldn't be involved in a period drama because my mother was sitting next to me. And it was only until I did Lady Macbeth, which came out a few years ago, that I got to do my first period drama, and I'm 51 now, and that was about 5 years ago. And I was being asked these questions, and it was quite extraordinary to try and find an answer, because it never really occurred to me that I couldn't do it, because it was there in my household, I presume for other people of colour that don't have that representation within their household, I think probably it would be a different journey, and maybe a difficult one, one of exclusion.
And now there's a whole spin-off series. I know you can't say much about it, but it is going to happen, isn't it?
Apparently so.
Sworn to secrecy. Tom, yes, can you tell us more? No.
That's the man to ask.
Yeah. I mean, Shonda Rhimes, the founder of Shondaland, has led the way on diversity with shows such as Grey's Anatomy. I mean, long before it became a buzzword in TV production, she was pushing that, wasn't she?
Yeah, it was. I think, in her early days of Grey's Anatomy, with the lead characters, both with Meredith Grey and with even with Kerry Washington in Scandal, I think there was an assumption once the script came out that if it was a political insider, that she was white. And I think I think Shonda's was always about kind of writing for the world around her and the people that she knows who are in positions. So when someone assumes that it's a strong doctor, does it have to be male? Does it have to be female? So very early on, I kind of really tapped into her thinking about whenever a part came up, is shaking the norms of what the assumption was, that why does anyone automatically think that this person has to be either a male or female? If it was a doctor, we'd say, well, that could be a female doctor. That could be this. It could be someone who has a disability. So we really kind of challenge ourselves, and she really laid that out there and challenged us, and as I challenged directors who we'd hire, to think outside the box and really explore those elements and shake up those assumptions that everyone has, and really kind of create the environment that she knew, the world that she knew of, and now have my kids. I have mixed race kids as well, and the world that they see is what if what are the possibilities? They should have the possibilities. My son looks like a young reggae, and he knows reggae because I've worked with reggae in another series. But he's seeing reggae in a role now that he's like, oh, I could do that, and that's a very big thing, and that doesn't happen until you put people in positions and in roles where people can identify and see these things are available to all types of people.
It's the what if.
Yes.
That's two beautiful words that should always be in writers' rooms and producers and executive. What if? What if we do this? What if we go this way? It opens up a whole world of wonderful creativity, a different pool set that you can work with, different characters, different artists that you can pull from. Yeah, there are people out there ready to work.
Because Julia, Queen Charlotte isn't in the books, is she?
I know. I was just telling Golda beforehand, I go back and forth between wishing I'd put Queen Charlotte in the books and being really glad that I didn't, because I don't think I could have made her possibly as fabulous as they did on the show, between the writing and the acting and the directing and everything. So I love Queen Charlotte so much.
Everyone does.
She loves you.
You guys missed it. This is actually the first time I got a chance to meet her.
Yeah, we've never met.
Oh, wow.
She just, the times I visited set, it's never been the Palace days.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
So I almost fell over. I fangirled like crazy.
And you've just been on set for season 2.
I did. I can also say nothing.
She went to a big castle, I can tell you that.
Except that it's very COVID safe. As most people know, I'm married to an infectious disease specialist, and he would be very, very impressed by the protocols. So very happy about that.
Golda, let's talk about your costumes, because Queen Charlotte is never seen in the same dress as you, but she has a particular look.
She does have a particular look, which is heavy.
I was wondering how you hold your head up.
Everybody asks, do you have strong neck muscles now? And I don't know. Possibly I do. They're
Did
quite
those wigs weigh a lot?
First season, yes, they did.
Yeah.
Every single one was an epic journey to
We just
to accomplish.
I noticed we were filming a couple weeks ago, and we have to be very careful about how long in her scenes, that we can't do all of her scenes in a row because she's got to wear this all day. And I'm thinking, what is that doing to her spine? It's like, so I talked to the grip department and I said,
amazing.
Can we find a rig that sits on the chair or whatever, that she could just rest her head on to take the weight off of that?
But
and they came back and
an hour later,
they
came back with this thing that has a flat back.
Yep.
So I put it on my back and it's got this curve that goes round like that.
Like those things that you wear on aeroplanes so you don't get a stiff neck. That's
kind
sort
of,
like that
yes.
look,
Kind of, but it's all made of wood, but the wood is straight, so I can put it on my back. It's portable. It's about that big, probably, with the circle thing. And I can put it in the chair, and I can literally just do that.
And it takes the weight. It takes the weight off it, right?
Genius!
We do need pictures eventually.
It's kind of makeshift at the moment, and I want them to spray
we got to refine it.
They got to have.
But we're like, why did we do this first season?
Yeah, I know, right?
But we have it now.
We have it now. And
for future.
But this season, going back to the question, is much, much better because we've refined, and the mesh or the lacing that it's that they create the wigs on, and the framing is a lot lighter. I think there's only 2 in this season that have been quite horrific.
I mean, Tom, just give us a sense of the scale of the costume department, and it's just
it is massive. I didn't quite know. I mean, it is an entire production into itself, and when I
mean, hundreds of people.
Yes, and a warehouse of just every department, whether it's just sewing the beads on the edge of a sleeve. It goes through many processes before it gets to. Before it makes it to screen, and it's an enormous undertaking of amazingly talented people, and so on so many levels that it's staggering. And
they got jewelry designers as well.
Well, I have one person for the Queen.
Yeah.
Just one person.
All of the jewelry for her, all the embossed stuff, all the necklaces, all the. I can't remember, his name has just escaped me. He's amazing. I think he's Italian. Beautiful, beautiful man. Yeah, and he makes all of the stuff that you see for the Queen. It's
They're
quite
all
extraordinary.
artisans.
I mean, there's
I
some
mean, really are.
costumes actually. A little show here, so do go and have a look, and you can see the detail. It's quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
all made
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
all made from
From
scratch.
all made from scratch. Because isn't it the case that normally in a costume drama, that you'd go and rent stuff from
Mary
where-
Poppins. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, whatever. But these were all made but from scratch because of this particular
Yeah.
look, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the colour.
Well, the boldness, the slightly brighter and bigger and flashier than normal. So yes, it needed to be built from ground up, and it takes a lot of people to make that happen.
I got to visit the costume
Did you?
warehouse. It was unbelievable. And you walk in, and there was
It's mind blowing. Yeah.
these 6 people often, hey, we're Team Daphne. You know, it was the cutest
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
we're Team Daphne. You know, and that's all they do. And up on the wall, I have a picture somewhere of this, like swatches they had from every single one of her gowns. You know, and I'm like, oh my God, it's like 104 of them. But they needed this palette to remember, like, these are, her 104 different looks.
Wow.
Because fashion presumably was very important in
Oh, yeah.
Regency London, wasn't it? You know, that's when they're kind of parading around.
Well, for the people who could afford it.
Who
but
could
yes.
afford it? Yes, yeah. Now, Julia, there, as I mentioned, eight Bridgerton siblings, 8 novels. So we've had Daphne's story, and your second book, The Viscount Who Loved Me, is sort of season 2, isn't it? And that's about her brother, Anthony. I mean, obviously you can't tell us about season 2, but in the book, why has he decided the time has come to settle down and stop dating actresses or opera singers?
Well, it's sort of that whole, women wait for the right guy, men wait for the right time type of thing. He just thinks it's the right time. He lives in a society where he has to pass along his title. He's like, I need to get married. I need to. Yeah, I don't want to. There's a kind of a spoiler involved in here. I don't want to give it away. But as to why, part of the reason why he thinks it's the right time, but he thinks it's the right time. So he's just like, all right, I got to do this. Let's do it.
So he then goes on the circuit. Who in the book, in The Viscount Who Loved Me, and what is Anthony looking for in a suitable bride? Who's in the running? And then we're going to talk about a little bit about how it's going to work on TV.
He just decides he wants, whoever's considered the best one that season, or as they call it in the series, the diamond of the first water.
Yeah.
And he says like, he wants her to be intelligent. So that's at least nice. He's going a little bit. He's raised the bar slightly higher. But he because he wants somebody. He doesn't want stupid children. So we'll give him that. He just wants somebody who he thinks will be a good mother and a decent enough wife, and for various reasons. He's picky but not picky, I guess is what to say. He's not looking for love, but he wants a good wife to.
Perhaps he's influenced by the strong women around him.
Yeah.
Possibly so.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Well, there's these 2 sisters who feature large in the book, the Sheffield sisters. Now they're actually going to be the Sharma sisters in the series. Edwina is 17, and her older sister Kate is 20, nearly 21, already considered to be almost on the shelf. But they're coming out at the same time because the family doesn't have much money, so they're doing a sort of 2-for-1 deal, aren't they, on the season?
Which was not uncommon.
Yeah, because I mean that's what I was going to. It was in considerable investment that they have to make, and they're fretting about the money all the time.
Oh my gosh, yes. For many people, it was a huge amount of money. A lot of people don't own a home in London, so they would rent out a townhome for the season. And so, if you had several daughters, it often made sense to try to get them into as small a time period as you could.
And then you had to have all the dresses, presumably.
Yeah.
And the carriages and
it was not cheap.
And so Tom, tell us about how much can you tell us about the Sharma family in season 2?
Not much. I can tell you about
There's
the
a clue in
actors
the name,
that we've
though,
hired.
isn't there?
Yes. We have Simone Ashley and Charithra and Shelley Khan. We 3 really talented actors who are playing the 2 sisters and mother of the Sharma family. Probably can't go much further. No, they're wonderful. They're really good. They really found their chemistry and their dynamic and chemistry all the way around. Yeah, I'm really trying to.
Because in the book, let's go back to the books. We can talk about that.
can
but
talk about the books
in the book, Kate is the older sister is quite sort of. Edwina's very beautiful and ethereal, isn't she? And Kate's quite sharp-tongued, I think we can say, blunt.
Yes, but Edwina's much more clever than people give her credit for. I want to make that clear. I didn't want the stereotypical, the smart one and the pretty one. I wanted them both to have a bit of both.
I noticed when you said you enjoyed writing dialogue in the Bridgertons. You've given Kate some quite good lines, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about writing books is that people can say the things that you think to say 3 hours late. Well, she's got it right there.
So, Tom, where are you with season 2? Can you tell us about the filming, the logistics of it, and when did you start filming? How's it gone?
We're in the thick of it. We started in the early spring, and we're past the halfway point, well past the halfway point. It's going really well. We're really happy with what we have. We're already editing as well and putting things together. So all the elements are coming together. It's happening probably on many layers and very quickly because there's a need to get it on as soon as possible.
Do we know when we might see it?
I am not aware. That'll be a
No.
Netflix question. Yeah, I'm not sure when.
It takes a while to put these things together.
It does. I mean, there's a lot of layers.
How long does each season take to film?
Just the filming process is.
6 months?
Yeah, probably. I mean, first season was probably about 6 months, right? Yeah, it's about six, 7 months.
And can you use any of the sets and costumes from season 1? Can you use them again, or did
I think we do. I think there's a continuity that's important, certainly for the
for
Queen's
the Queen.
world. There's things that have to be consistent. We have found a few new places and keeping it fresh, and with the infusion of this new family that's coming aboard and bringing another layer to it has enabled us to open it up in other ways. So there's always a desire to keep grounded. I mean, the Bridgertons are kind of the anchor of who we're following and who we love to be around. So there's consistency there. But with the other characters and new characters, it really gives us a chance to explore other elements and new layers.
And have you got some exciting new locations this time? Or?
Yeah.
Because you can't tell us.
I have to tell you that I have this wonderful screen grab of Golda where you say, "Tell me what you know." And it's got the subtitle on it, and I said basically like every Bridgerton fan ever when anything gets announced, tell me what you know.
Yeah. I have family members contact me that I haven't talked to in years, and the greatest thing, we talk about, and it might have been on one of your questions about whether this is a series geared towards women only and our men. I've had more men that I have not talked to in years who saying, "Well, I was watching this with my wife, but it's a good show." I gotta say. And they're like, "So when's the next season coming out?" It is hysterical to see
the number of men who've said to me, they're like, "I'm a straight guy, but my God, that guy's handsome." Like the number.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got quite a few men in the audience here. Yeah, Bridgerton fans, clearly. That's great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have you any idea, kind of audience-wise, how that breaks down? So
I'm sure there's algorithms that figure all that out, with depending upon viewing habits that in this world that that they target certain audiences. But I think they're surprised at how high there was probably, and I'm not too involved on that level of it, but that it's surpassed expectations. I think on levels that they thought might have been heavier in one area, that there's a much wider spectrum that this has appealed to.
But I think I think it's because the characters are relatable as well.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That's what Shondaland is all about. Having, thinking out the box, creating a space for people to jump in and dream, but also for the characters to be relatable, for people to see themselves reflected. So I think that's definitely to be championed.
And the audience is worldwide. That's what's amazing.
Yeah.
It didn't settle with just English language.
But that comes from the books as well. The fans of the books are world.
Brazil.
I tried to warn you guys ahead of time.
Are you big in Brazil?
The books are
huge
really big in Brazil.
Huge.
And the Brazilian fans are so...
They are so passionate.
Passionate.
Wow.
I have been on book tour twice in Brazil.
What do they do?
I have videos like I've shown for my family. You walk in and they're screaming like it's the Beatles. They really treat authors like rock stars. It's unbelievable. And my family's looking at like, what?
Yeah.
Like for you? And so before they made all these announcements, I said to the people at Shondaland, I said, just to warn you, there's this the fans from Brazil will be
You
really.
were right.
And they were all like, "Oh, we're good, we're good, we're good." And then literally after day one, I get back like, "We need a translator. We need to get a translator."
I think a royal tour of Brazil is,
But
once
that's the
COVID's
thing
over.
as well. They are absolutely passionate about the characters in the book, but they've really embraced, say, the Queen and other characters that we've put in, and the whole thing just kind of is wonderful to see. That
Once we get
embrace.
past COVID, if they could send the cast to Brazil, you would shut the country down. It would.
I would love
Yeah.
to go to Brazil.
Oh, it's
Somebody make it happen.
And to what extent do you think people have watched the series and then picked up the books?
Oh, quite a lot.
A lot.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
It's
A surge in sales after, I would imagine.
yes, very much so. I mean, I don't even know how I can't don't even have words for it. I mean, within my field, I did really quite well. I was definitely considered one of the top historical romance authors.
Before
Before,
the
yeah,
TV series,
but it's nothing compared to how it is now. It's just has been a worldwide explosion, and one of the things that's really most delightful for me is the Duke and I, which is the first book in the series, is now one of the most widely translated books in history.
Wow.
Oh my God.
I looked it up. I believe it's up to it's
Wild.
over 40 countries or 40 languages, I should say, and some of them are just it's in Hala. I'm ashamed to say I had to look it up. It's part of Sri Lanka where they speak that. Georgian recently, Macedonian, quite a few different Asian, East Asian languages. It's just incredible. Like there was this week where all of a sudden, like 5 different Eastern European languages came in, and it was just spectacular.
Yeah.
So that's been really
to
amazing.
what do you attribute that kind of the worldwide success of the stories? Is it the universality of a love story? Do you think?
I think so. I think that everybody or almost everybody's looking for love. Really, I mean, and Bridgerton came out in a time. Bridgerton the show came out in a time when I think everybody was desperate for more human connection. We were all kind of stuck in our own homes and our own little things, and
And a little bit of escapism.
Yeah,
as well,
escapism, and
escapism.
there isn't a lot in entertainment that truly models and values happiness as a goal.
Yeah.
And and I'm there for all the edgy, dark shows as well. I love that stuff. But if you look at what the entertainment industry values in terms of where they're sending their awards, where they're doing their features, where they're spending their production money, it's not so much on things that are modeling and valuing happiness. And I think Bridgerton did a great job of sort of bursting through that and saying, hey, actually, people do want to be happy, and we would like to see shows where people are, that is their goal, happiness.
No, I totally agree. Actually, I think my husband and I are starting to watch it last Christmas precisely for that reason, because we was it was such a dark time here, wasn't it? And I just didn't want to watch shows with jeopardy anymore. I wanted to see bright colours. I wanted to see people falling in love. I wanted to see people swirling around dance floors, in nice costumes. I wanted to escape, So I think a lot of us felt that. I think that another thing about the series, and address this question to all of you really, is what was striking is how the camera lingered on male bodies as well as female bodies. I mean, it is a female gaze, and that's very refreshing, isn't it? And that was deliberate, wasn't it, Tom?
Yeah, I think it's again, it's imagining it's a world in which Shonda tapped into about. We're pretty used to seeing it through the lens of a male gaze for many years through all forms of entertainment. So turning it on its head, not necessarily just to turn it on its head, but really accessing half the world who hasn't really experienced a lot of that. So I think it challenged us to sort of look through that prism, and particularly with these characters that Shonda created in not only her other shows, but certainly in Julia's books, that is really enabling that camera to linger a little bit longer in areas that maybe wasn't the norm before. So I think it's been it gives us a chance at telling something a little more different and a little more fresher, and not sort of being overly gratuitous about it, but really kind of enabling it to see in a real way, in a way that someone might imagine it if it isn't a particular patriarch making the decision about how that gets told.
Because Judy, I mean, how much sort of say did you have in the TV show, or is it kind of totally separate, or are you a consultant on it, or?
I am officially a consultant, but it was the easiest consulting job ever because it was just so good. I mean, honestly, but I did.
Did they ring you up and ask you questions?
Well, they email, but yeah. I mean, but mostly it was things like, all right, we want the Featheringtons to have a title, but they shouldn't be as high up as the Bridgertons, so which we give them. So it was very granular things. But I do have to say flat out that when we were in early talks, the very first question you get is, are you willing to give up creative control? And I just basically threw the books at them and said yes. Because because nothing like this had ever happened to me. Nothing like this had ever happened to anybody I knew in my field, so I was not going to jeopardize this one by being a difficult person to work with. But also, I'm not going to tell Shonda Rhimes how to make television. I mean, she knows what she's doing. And it was the smartest thing I could have done, honestly, because there's so many. I remember when I read the first script, it was fascinating. I was speaking with somebody in the PR department, and she was like, Shonda says, just to keep an open mind because it opens a little differently, and just kind of, I think they were worried that, I'd look at the way things were structured differently and be all upset. And when, when I read it, I realized instantly what they meant, but it was fascinating because I thought to myself, this is done perfectly. This is absolutely how this needs to be done, and I would never have thought of it. And so to me, that was
a good marriage.
It really was. And so I love that I hear from people saying like, oh, now the books are so much better. And I love that I hear from people saying the television show is much better. And I think it's great because I think they're great compliments. And so, if people have, if there isn't a consensus, I think that means we've done it right, frankly.
And they are, I mean, two different mediums. I mean,
Yeah.
it is. I mean, they're so many books have been turned into films, and some more successful than it goes both ways how it's executed. But it really is different mediums, and your approach to it is evidenced by either adding more characters or taking certain licenses to make it more dynamic in a way that just is specific to that genre.
Now I'm going to open up to questions in a second from the audience, and there's a microphone on each side. So if you go to the nearest microphone, and I'll take sort of 4 questions at a time. So if you make your way there. But I wanted to come back to the fact that, I mean, he has been fantastic for the British economy because you've created like that. I mean, I want to return again to the scale of this. I mean, in season 1, what was the biggest thing that you had to film, the biggest scene? And then just talk us through the logistics of that, because filming those big sort of ballroom scenes, that must be...
It's the ballroom scenes are the most.
I mean, how do you do that?
It takes many weeks of preparation.
About 3 days.
Well, many weeks of preparation, and then the filming of it is about 3 days.
Yeah.
I think that's...
I remember the block that I directed last year. We did 3 balls in 1 week.
That's right.
Because we had a particular area and location that we were able to maximize the use of the space and also the number of people required for that. So that was probably the most challenging week because it was probably the most challenging week just because we approach these thematically that they're very different. There's separate things about what's specific about this ball, starting with the costume, starting with the production design. It's multi-layered, and how we separate them and how we approach the feeling of what's happening in the scene, what's happening with the characters. Is it a romance section? Is it the fight?
Yeah.
So it's really kind of specific about how we approach that, and then the logistics of approaching that. How much time they need, the art department needs to get in there to dress it, changing over some of these historical locations to be more period accurate, as well as giving it the flash
And how many hundreds of people would you have both on the set?
I mean, not only the hundreds that are. Take a message.
Hello.
Hundreds of people behind the scenes in the costume department alone. Again, and hair and makeup department with the numerous people checking every costume, and they're again very meticulous and specific about how everything must be pristine, because you'll never know with the camera moving, it might linger and fall onto one of our essays who has to look perfection. You can't just sort of slap something on someone in the background, because everyone's always in play, and every detail is always in play. So the attention to detail in bringing it in the prep stages, and then the execution with the numerous crew members that it takes in each department to bring that, it's a circus.
And everybody has to dance well as well.
And
I mean, you can't be
well,
tripping
yes.
over, can you? Can imagine
No,
you
and
set
that's
up the
well
whole scene.
choreographed. Jack Murphy is.
Yeah, Jack is brilliant. But having said that, yeah, it is an epic. It is an epic thing to come up with. Having said that, they are the most intimate moments that we as actors have, because the whole cast is there. So the Featheringtons will be there, the Bridgertons will be there, and it will be like we don't get to see each other because we're filming different scenes. The balls are so gorgeous because all of us get to see each other. And we catch up and we gossip and we find out how our normal lives are going. So for this epic creation, it is such a beautiful, intimate 3 days for us as actors.
But it drives directors crazy. They won't stop talking.
Yeah.
We've got to get going because we got filming.
Like, get on the set.
Those are one of my.
And they all get along. This
favourite
cast gets along really well.
So well.
Really well.
So well. We're a family.
Yeah,
you
it
know?
truly is.
A real community.
Well, I suppose if you spend 6 months together doing something quite intense like
Yeah.
that, you do, and it's long days, isn't it?
Long days.
What?
yeah.
Because I was hearing about how early you have to get up in the morning.
Sometimes, yes. Get up at about 4:30 sometimes.
And how long does costume, hair, makeup take you on average?
So I'll probably get. So the other day I was 4:30 and on set at 7:30. So I think I had my breakfast at 6:30, and so count back an hour. Yeah, that's just for makeup, an hour, and then it's a logistical mare for me.
Yeah, the whole team starts about 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Then the unit comes in at 7 or 8.
Yeah. And
So
then
have we got
finish
any-
at like 6:30 or something like that, 7:30.
We're going to. Our time is running out, so I'd love to hear a question. If you can't get to the mic, you can shout it out. I can see somebody wants it in the middle. Yes, go ahead, lady in the blue jumper there with your hand up. Go on. Yeah.
Whose like storyline or which character's like development is your favourite out of all of either the Bridgertons, the Featheringtons, like the girls, or anyone really? Yeah.
Okay, and I'll take another question while we're at it. Yes, the lady in the stripy T-shirt first.
Okay, considering that the history is British, most of the cast are British, can anyone answer for me why, say, the BBC or Film 4, Channel 4 never made a programme with this kind of flip to it?
I think it might be quite difficult for them to answer that question.
Controversial.
I'm not from here, so I won't answer.
Yeah. That's one for you, Golda. The lady in the front row, and then we'll start answering them.
My question is kind of for Julia, because I was wondering if you'd noticed that having the force of Netflix and Shondaland behind your ideas and your books has changed the way your genre is perceived, because it's sort of there's a little bit of misogyny in the literary world with regards to historical romance. And I suppose I don't know if I've quite seen it, but I'm hoping that with this production and the attention that it will be changing, and that it will be getting more, I don't know if the word's respect from the rest of the literary world, because you're such a fantastic writer. Thank you. So have you noticed? Have you noticed any changes?
Let's start with that question. Do you think there's been a shift? Because there's a little bit of sort of critical snobism, isn't there, around the Regency romance thing?
Well, I mean, and there still is. Even Bridgerton gets some. One thing that I find fascinating is, you look at the press of the show, and people are always like, this, Netflix's sexy romp, Netflix's most raunchy show, and all these things. And part of me, I look at it and I think if you take it in a scientific manner, it's not more explicit than many, many other shows. And the difference is that female gaze.
Yeah.
And suddenly, when you flip the script that way, and instead of, treating sex as something that's transactional, which you see in many, many shows, now that we have these, we see Johnny's rear end first rather than somebody else. Or, we got a little bit more of, Ray's pecs and abs than we do of, Phoebe's body. And suddenly that's raunchy. And I'm thinking, well, no, it's just now we're seeing it in a different way. It's not any raunchier or sexier. So I think there's some inherent, misogyny in that and the way that people have chosen to describe it. But I think it's also because it's very unfamiliar to have a show that's become this big, done with such a female gaze. Speaking more specifically about the books, there's a certain level of respect that comes with a giant Netflix show. I mean, suddenly people kind of get what you do. I have a lot of friends who write historical romance, and they've said to me, like, it's so great. People finally understand what I do, because they're like, it's like Bridgerton. I write books like Bridgerton. And people actually know what it is. They don't have to decide. So I think there has been some shift. I think we are getting a bit different types of press. I mean, you still get the stupid questions, honestly, but suddenly different media outlets want to talk to you about it. I do think that had started somewhat before the show. We'd started to see a bit of a shift, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, so greater awareness,
Yeah, but we'll see. Yeah.
So, Golda, as the Brit on stage, you have to answer, why did the BBC or Channel 4 not make this?
Oh, dear.
Can I just say they wouldn't have had the money
I
to put it
wanted
together?
you to answer.
Oh, right.
As a neutral, let me hear the question one more time.
Okay.
Just to be clear.
Most of the cast are British.
Right.
Why was it that it took Shondaland to include the people?
Well,
that have
I
been
I
included?
think it wasn't. We weren't carrying the weight of all that. I think we were fans of all those shows, but I think it really is. What are the stories we want to tell? What do we want to see? What's the world we want to take this genre and infuse kind of the world that's around us now, and putting a fresh take on it. So it wasn't a conscious decision to do something different. It just became. It was inspirational, I think, in our approach to a genre which we love. And doing what is fairly normal with how we see things that other people, it's very interesting that you say that, because a number of crew members and actors, and I'm sure Golda can attest to this, that people of color who are in our cast, and it's quite surprising to me because it's fairly normal in America, saying we would be the servant over there, and the fact that I'm wearing a royal uniform is freaking me out right now. So it's kind of mind-boggling to hear that, and I think even more why it's important that we are telling this story. But it's fairly normative for our approach to it. So it wasn't that we were trying to do to flip what the BBC does or other genres have. It was an approach that was creatively. All these elements came together, and it's really kind of wanting to tell it in a world that we're familiar with.
And I think that I'm going to ask you, Tom, to answer the first question, which was, looking back at season 1 now, is there anything that you would change?
Why would you change when it's been successful for where it is? It's not. I don't think there's. I think you learn just naturally, and having been part of numerous shows in seasons 1, there are things that you see where there's areas of improvement. I don't think it's in the storytelling. The storytelling is all there. It's mostly an execution and bringing the right personalities, whether it's behind the scenes or on camera, and the infusion of these three characters, this new family coming in, has been really exciting, because we have our rock and our core group who deliver. And unfolding ways that kind of reveal a little bit more about the Queen Charlotte and all our characters. But through the prism of this group, makes it exciting to sort of see an escalation or just peeling back the curtain a bit more on these characters and diving a little bit deeper into the worlds.
I don't think he's going to be able to answer your other question, which is, do you have a favourite character? Because I think that would be
Queen Charlotte.
Absolutely.
I mean, come on.
I will say I wanted more Prudence fainting. When Prudence faints in that first episode, I wanted a few more seconds of her because Bessie is such a fabulous comic actress, and I wanted to see the eyes roll back in her head. So that's the only thing I would change.
But to that point, even if it's not in the script. In fact, yesterday we discovered we had Bessie on, and I will find things for her behavior that when someone is just standing there to give to her. That she will take, and my eye just constantly goes to her physical comedy, and she will take a little kernel of something and just bring it way, just bring it to life. And it's so.
Can I add something to the lady's question here? In terms of British kind of television making, I hope that the conversation in those rooms will now change. The what if, I think, is a really important thing, and that now people will be more. Less afraid of putting black and brown characters in the forefront of their dramas or comedies or, period dramas. Yeah, so hopefully this has shifted what we do over here. In others, exactly.
I'm going to take a couple more questions. This lady here, and then in the third row behind you first. I think a microphone is no. Okay. Oh, just be loud.
We can hear you. Project.
I think there's a microphone coming.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Or Francesca's story, where it kind of there's a bit of a timeline of her, not spoiler sport, but her previous love and then her new love. How do you plan, or how do you imagine? I know you've given up some creative control, and not to get into that, but how would you imagine that be portrayed on kind of on the screen? Because it's kind of in the books, it's kind of one character's perspective and then another character's perspective. But in with the changing times, how would you? In those storylines, how would you imagine it being kind of portrayed?
Okay, could you pass your microphone behind you to the lady? There's another. You got a question there? Yeah.
Congratulations on the show, first of all. So as I was watching the show, at first I thought, this is a refreshing take because there's black and brown characters, and that's something that I'm not used to seeing, especially in a period drama. However, it almost felt like it was colorblind until that one scene with the Duke and Lady Danbury, where they allude to that society was not always this way. It was because of Queen Charlotte being married to King. And as I didn't know the historical knowledge, and I was just wondering if in the later seasons or in the spin-off, if that's going to be explored further about how Queen Charlotte her presence has elevated black people into society into roles such as a Duke and Lady Danbury and the rest of the characters.
Okay, I'm just to take one final one. Okay, this lady in the blue jumper there.
I'd like to know from Julia, which book is your favorite out of the 8?
Ooh.
And
Pick a child.
secondly,
Yeah, exactly.
with the seasons, so you're filming the second season, which is book 2. Will you continue in the sequence with 3, 4, 5, however many you decide to do, or will you jump around a little bit and decide, oh, maybe we like this book better, so we'll make that the 4th season?
Okay, there's a lot because we've only really got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to hand it over to Julia first. So first of all, yes,
which child do you like?
Yes. Okay, which book is your favourite?
Pass.
Okay.
But I will say that I do get asked about characters a lot, and I adore Lady Danbury and Violet, who never are the protagonists of a book, but I think because they appear in so many books, I've gotten to know them perhaps even better than some of the main characters. And Violet in particular, the growth in the series, if you read her in the first book, she's almost two-dimensional. She's not nearly as vibrant and three-dimensional as she becomes later in the series as I get to know her better. So I guess there's that. And then in terms of books, I certainly don't have a favorite. I will say that I do think the plot of The Viscount Who Loved Me, which is what the second season is somewhat based on, is actually more cinematic than The Duke and I. So, and just in terms of the way it's structured. So I'm pretty excited about that. Because they did an awfully good job with the first one.
The lady there made a good point about actually race is only discussed once in season 1. That one conversation that she mentioned. Is it going to be explored further?
I think elements of that. I think it's. I don't think it's going to be the main focus, because I think it really is again not teaching about things, but really presenting it in a way that feels, from a storytelling standpoint, that feels normative. So. But not shying away from it. And it really is striking that delicate balance, because we find that there's some people want more of that, some people want less of that. They don't. So it's. I would say there definitely will be touching on elements of that, and certainly in the spin-off, I think we're going to see a little bit more about Queen Charlotte and kind of the origins of what her story is about. And I think it certainly will touch upon those elements. I haven't. Read it in the script yet, but
I mean, for me personally, I don't need to be told anything. Just put them on the screen. Just put them on the screen and let them live and react and play and have conversations and be human beings. That's ultimately what we want to see.
And just finally, very briefly, Julia, do you visualize your novels on screen? I think is what you're essentially what you were asking, isn't it?
I'm one of the least visual writers I know. And that's one thing that makes it really fascinating. Now, I had to go back and read or skim my books, and I don't usually do that because I have a book coming out soon called The Wit and Wisdom of Bridgerton, which is a collection of sort of best quotes. And what was really interesting is, as I was going back, suddenly I do visualize the actors.
Yeah.
And even though in the book Simon has blue eyes, it's reggae. That's what I see. I mean, forget it. I mean, I see, I mean, there's no way I could read anything about Eloise without seeing Claudia, and she's the physicality of her performance is so amazing. I was just complimenting her because I did get to see her yesterday, because I saw her Claudia Jessie in Vanity Fair, where it's also a period piece, but she's very, she's not moving like Eloise, and you're like, wow, you know what you're doing. My gosh, that's amazing. And so this is who I see now.
But the books really do create the palette for us to really get cinematic with this. So whether it was purposeful or not, it's certainly given.
We think she's probably more visual than she's admitting. Yeah.
I'm just putting the framework for people who are more visual.
I'm afraid we've run out of time. Can I just ask you to remain in your seats until our guests have left the stage? Because they're still filming, and so they've got to be careful. And the other thing is, Julia's going to be signing books, so you'll have a chance to meet her. But I would just want to say thank you so much for giving your time, and thank you to the audience for great questions.
Thank you all for coming.